everybody, and welcome back to Horror Film Lovers. I'm your host, Jonathan Moody, and today we have a new show for you guys. It's a really fun one. It's called Top 10 Tuesday Frights. It is a new show where I'm going to give my top 10 favorites of whatever it is. And this week, it is Top 10 Horror Villains. So I am super stoked about that. I've been a huge fan of horror, as you know. I'm a horror film lover. And was like, what am I going to do for the first one? And I was thinking, perfect idea is to start it off with horror film villains. Later, I might do horror film heroes, but I'm also doing for Wildcard Wednesday. I've already recorded this. It's coming out next week, and it's going to be top 10 final girls, and that's going to be for Wildcard Wednesday. So it's a completely different thing. I've just started this brand new thing, and I don't know why I let that go with horror. Was it with Wildcard Wednesday? But you know what? I did it for that. So there you go. But I've decided let's do this one and get this out. So it's not going to be every Tuesday. It's probably going to be one Tuesday a month that I do this show. I'm going to try to have different days and different things to do. So I'm working that out. But for the first day here is top 10 Tuesday Frights. So let's get into it. So my top 10 horror villains, starting with number 10. Obviously, we're not going to start with number one. I'm not going to tell my favorite yet. Uh, my least favorite of this 10 is the tall man. And the only reason he's my least favorite is because he's the one I've watched the least of and stuff, and the least amount of times, and everything. I haven't really watched that many of the Phantasms, but when I saw the tall man in the first Phantasm, I fucking loved him. I thought he was super cool, and I wanted to watch more, and I just never did. So this year, I am planning to watch all the Phantasm movies, all of them. I think there's five or six or something, so I am planning to watch them all. I'm not gonna binge watch them, but I'll watch them all throughout the year, and maybe for like was it at least once a month, maybe I'll do a what is it ah I'll do a first time watch Friday with the Phantasm series and stuff. I think that'll be a lot of fun. Or they'll be part of Mainstream Monday. It's an either or. I don't know because John Ward and I haven't discussed that. I think we've got something else planned for the next Mainstream Monday that's going to take up like a pretty good chunk of the season. All right. So next is number 9 is Norman Bates, also a guy I haven't watched enough of. So I probably get a deep dive into that too. So that would be great because I've seen the first Phantasm and I've seen the first Psycho, but I love those characters. I absolutely do. I think Norman Bates is awesome. I mean, not in a like, like, but he was fun, and I loved the Bates Motel show too. And I did watch the whole series of that. That was a lot of fun. But I really, really liked Norman Bates in the first Psycho. But I'm a huge, I'm a huge Alfred Hitchcock fan, and I know like the more it went on, like the more movies that they did, it got even crazier and stuff, more horror like. So there you go. Number 8 is Warlock. And once again, another character that I haven't watched the other two. I'm going to this year. So I've already watched the first one, and I'm reviewing that for 80s horror films, which is coming out, I think, this Friday, if I'm mistaken. Like, if I'm not mistaken, which I think Rebecca and I are recording it on Wednesday. So don't quote me on that because sometimes things fall through and we're not able to get it done when we think we're going to be able to get it done. All right. Number 7 is Leprechaun. And I've seen a bunch of the Leprechaun movies, but I really do need to rewatch all of them. By the way, I have a bunch of horror friends here, and we'll get into that, you know, there on my shirt, but I'm trying not to give anybody away. that I might include on this. You'll see a few. Uh, you'll see more popular ones. I do want to do like a top 10 obscure ones at some point, but I figured these are actually my favorite of them and everything. So there you go. All right. So next is after Leprechaun is number 6, which is Leatherface. Another character I've seen a lot of, but not all of the movies. And I do want to deep dive more into Texas Chainsaw movies. I've seen one, two, I want to say the remakes and a bunch of the, other ones. I do need to watch 3 and 4. For some reason I just never did. And I think it's because they're not easily available like on streaming. And back in the day when I would watch these, I just didn't buy the or rent them at the video store like I would some of the other ones and everything. Or I never saw them on cable like I saw all the other ones. So there you go. But Leatherface is such a great character. Gunnar Hansen did a fantastic job in the first movie. And then, all the subsequent Leatherfaces have been a lot of fun too. Uh, Number 5 is the one I mean, I've seen every movie of this. So I think all 5 of these, except maybe one, and we'll get into that, I've seen most of these movies, right? And everything. So, Michael Myers is my number 5, and Halloween is probably up there as one of my favorites, favorite horror films. It so it's funny because it's probably the first Halloween is probably my favorite of the top 5 horror icons. I'm just going by like villain wise, why I like him. I mean, Michael Myers is kind of boring in a way, in my opinion. Like, I mean, I get what they were trying to do, but then they kind of changed things up and switched things up, and it became a little too annoying. Uh, but I love the first Halloween Michael Myers movie. I thought it was really well done. John Carpenter just is fantastic as ever, and that was the movie that really put him on the map. And then number 4 is from my favorite, like my second favorite franchise from the horror world. It is Ghostface from Scream. And I Scream is the movie that got me back into horror. So whenever somebody asks me what my favorite horror film is, I say Scream. I say the Scream series. Scream itself is my favorite horror film, but like Evil Dead is the one that like actually scared me as a kid. But I can't. I mean, I could have put the Deadites, I guess, in there as my horror villains, but I mean, not really. Didn't really feel like doing that. But Ghostface. So sorry, no Deadites in this. But Ghostface, yeah, I absolutely love the character. I love the fact that anyone can be Ghostface. It's not, it's not Michael Myers, it's not Leatherface, it's not anyone else. It's like people, and they're human. You pick them and they go, ow, like that doesn't normally happen with horror people. Like you kick, Leatherface and he doesn't say ow. He just keeps coming at you. So it's really fun to see like normal people inside the mask doing stuff and and whatnot. All right, number 3 is Chucky, and he's the one that I haven't watched everything, but I've watched a lot. So I've watched Child's Play 1, 2, 3, 4. I think that's The Bride of Chucky. I've not seen Seed of Chucky yet. I plan to watch that this year. And then I've watched Cult of Chucky and the other one, Curse of Chucky or whatever. So, and then I've also seen some of the TV shows, so I need to watch that too. But I Chucky. So as a kid, I was always like terrified of Chucky for whatever reason. Um, and I'm a short guy, like I'm not really that tall. So like I still like even a short, teeny tiny guy like Chucky kind of intimidates me a little bit. I wouldn't want, see, a lot of times people just make the mistake of picking him up and everything. When he comes at you, you could, I figure, if he didn't have a knife in his hand, you could just punt him, but usually he has a knife in his hand. You try to punt him, he's gonna swipe down your leg. Um, he, I think what makes him great is his attitude and his he's terrifying. Brad Dorff, who I've met, he's a great guy. Uh Brad Dorff, he does such a fantastic job. Everybody in the whole thing just fantastic. Like every actor that's ever worked on these movies, I've loved. Um and you know, the first Chucky is probably the best, but after that, I really do like the sequels, and I like that it did get kind of funny at times, quirky, because I think at that time that's when the villains were kind of silly, or at least the talking ones were silly. All right. Speaking of talking ones, my number two is Freddy Krueger. A lot of people be like, "Why isn't he your number one?" Well, you'll find out, and you can probably guess what my number one would be based on the other ones, but we'll get into that. My number two is Freddy Krueger. I also met Robert Englund, and I was taking a picture of him with my friend, using my friend's camera, phone. I couldn't figure it out how to do everything, and he was grabbing my friend with the Freddy glove and as I was trying to figure it out, he goes, "Take the picture, bitch." I'm sorry, but like that didn't make me go any faster because that just made me super happy. Here, I heard Freddy Krueger's voice talking to me. That just made me happy. Um, I enjoyed yeah, I enjoyed it and I had a blast meeting him. He was super nice. Uh One of my favorite encounters. And I'll tell you what my favorite encounter is and in 1 second. But yeah, I had a blast with the Freddy Krueger movies. All seven of the original plus I don't like the remake that much at all. Um, and it's not the guy who plays uh Freddie's fault. That guy's like I think like an Oscar winning actor or whatever, or nominated actor. I don't know, something. He's a really big like he's been in some really big movies and yet he was Freddy Krueger and it was terrible. But you know, I like that and I like Freddy versus Jason. I just think it got a little bit too silly maybe at the times, but whatever. What can you do? I really liked it. I used to be scared of them because they were like frightening looking. But as I got older and everything, once I started getting into making movies and figuring all that stuff out, like nothing really the only things that like, scare me now are like movies that like sort of mess with my brain, you know, or whatever. That kind of thing. So my number one, yes, and you probably guessed it. You're probably saying it to yourself right now, but my number one is Jason Voorhees. And I and you could be like, "Oh, why? What does he do that's different than Michael Myers or Freddy or anybody like that?" It's my top 10 Tuesday Frights, not yours. So I choose the character that got me so much in love with horror. Um so Friday the 13th used to play on USA all the time. On every Friday the 13th, there would be a marathon of them. And I think even around Halloween time, around October, there was a marathon of Friday the 13th films. And it would go like Friday the 13th 1 through whatever. And sometimes it would go up to the eighth one. And the eighth one became my favorite because even though there was things that they hid and everything, I just found it fun and funny and it you know I didn't realize like for a long time I didn't realize horror could be funny, so as a kid watching something that made me laugh at times made me happy, but also I used to just love Jason. I bought books about Jason with Jason, like a Friday the 13th books. I bought the movies. I did a lot of stuff, and I was always into Jason. Jason scared me, mainly because I live out in the woods, and when I would look outside, I would think of that scene. I think it was in I want to say it was Friday the 13th Part 5 where he was at Tommy Jarvis was at the like kind of retreat for the mental people and everything. I don't know how to say that properly. And then there's a uh Jason outside, and it was just his imagination, I think. I don't know. It could have been the guy dressed up like Jason. But you find out later Jason was dead for real, and that they were using they were using what is it? His mask or whatever. So Jason was dead in that particular one. Anyway, I loved it, thought it was great, and it was kind of the uh perfect villain for me to get into. I love the hockey mask. I've never known it other than the hockey mask because when I started getting into horror as a kid, the hockey mask had already been established, and everybody would go to trick or treating as Jason would wear the hockey mask. So it became iconic. But I mean, I've loved the Jason character. I understand that the original writer is the one who put things into Halt and everything. I've interviewed him and Victor Miller, and he never wanted Jason to be the killer. It was always Jason's mom in the first one. And I remember watching Friday the 13th with my dad for the first time, and my dad actually liked it, I believe. But he was asking the interesting question of like, why would anybody get into a car uh with a guy with a hockey mask on? And I always thought that was funny because he wasn't. He didn't, you find out later is Jason's mom, and everything, who gets her head chopped off by Adrian King. Alice Hardy, wonderful stuff. But yeah, Jason is by far my favorite villain. He's so much fun. All the movies go from serious to comedy to serious to comedy. I mean, a lot of them have comedy in it because, you can't really like it's like Freddy. You just can't take it too damn seriously. You gotta have some comedy in it. And I think I mean, they always did that. Even in part one, it had some comedy in it. So I loved it. I had a blast. It's just great. So, yep, you can see sort of. I've got a bunch of my favorites up here. Um, if you have to ask why I put Jigsaw on it, I've been watching the Saw movies on Mainstream Monday. They're not my favorite. I like the first one, but after that, it just feels like old hat. It feels like, okay, same thing, different trap, Some are cool, so whatever, but not my cup of tea, man. I love slashers and I love ghost stories and I love, that kind of stuff. I just don't like people torturing people. It's just not as interesting to me. I mean, I'm not that into Hostel, more into Cabin Fever if you do Eli Roth. I mean, so anywho, that is my top 10 horror villains. Since I've done a top 10 final girls, I may do a top 10 final guys at some point. And yeah, I think that could be kind of cool. If there's like, I know there's a bunch of final guys out there. And so I'd have a lot of fun with that one. But yeah, there are I will also be doing a top 10 obscure horror villains at some point, and my favorite top 10 obscure horror villains. And I mean, obscure is such a weird word because if you're really a horror film lover, none of these are really obscure. The ones that people go, "Oh, that's obscure." Is it? But anyway, I'll mention ones that hopefully I'll mention ones that people don't talk about that much. But that's down the line. I don't think that's going to be anytime soon. I'm going to figure out other top 10 movies or stuff to do, top 10 stuff to do, but we'll see. Until then, I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll be back with a new top 10 next month. So tune in then. Okay, bye.